My brother sabotaged every single relationship I ever had because he couldn't stand seeing me happy. He did it for years and I could never prove it. So when he finally met a girl, he actually liked I told her everything with receipts. She left him at the restaurant before the appetizers arrived. Hey Reddit. So my brother spent literally 7 years destroying every relationship I tried to build because apparently my happiness was too much for him to handle. I could never prove it was him until about 6 months ago when I finally caught him red-handed. And when he finally met someone he actually cared about, I made sure she knew exactly who she was dating. Spoiler alert, she didn't stick around for the main course. I'm Jake, 29 male, and my brother is Ethan, 26 male. We grew up pretty normal. Not rich, not poor, just your average middle-class family in the suburbs. Our parents are good people who always treated us fairly, so this isn't some golden child situation. Ethan just has this weird competitive thing with me that I didn't fully understand until recently. Growing up, we were actually close. I'm 3 years older, so I'd help him with homework, teach him how to ride a bike, the usual big brother stuff. But something shifted when we both hit our 20s. Looking back now, I can pinpoint exactly when it started, right after I got my first serious girlfriend at 22. Her name was Jessica, and we met at a friend's barbecue the summer after I graduated college. She was smart, funny, had this infectious laugh that could light up a room. We clicked instantly. For the first few months, everything was perfect. I introduced her to my family around month 3, and everyone seemed to like her. Ethan was especially friendly. Maybe too friendly, but at the time I just thought he was being a good brother. Things started getting weird around month 5. Jessica began acting distant. She'd take forever to respond to texts, cancel plans last minute, and just seemed uncomfortable around me. When I asked what was wrong, she'd say everything was fine, but I could tell something was off. Then one day, out of nowhere, she broke up with me, said she didn't think we were compatible long-term, and that she'd been having doubts for a while. I was crushed, but I respected her decision and moved on. Or tried to, anyway. 6 months later, I met Amanda at a work conference. She was an accountant for a different firm, and we bonded over our mutual hatred of Excel spreadsheets and overly long meetings. We started dating, and again, everything was great for the first few months. I introduced her to my family, including Ethan. He was charming as always, asking her about her job, making jokes, being the fun younger brother. Same pattern as before. Around month 4 or 5, Amanda started pulling away. She became secretive with her phone, stopped wanting to hang out with my friends, and eventually told me she thought we should see other people. I asked if there was someone else, and she swore there wasn't. She just said she didn't see a future with us. 2 relationships, same outcome. I figured maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was doing something wrong that pushed women away after a few months. I talked to my friends about it, tried to figure out what I was missing. They all said I seemed like a great boyfriend, attentive, respectful, supportive. But clearly something wasn't working. Then came Rachel. Met her at a coffee shop where she worked as a barista. We started talking, exchanged numbers, and began dating about a year after Amanda and I split. Rachel was different, or so I thought. She was more outgoing than my previous girlfriends, had a tight group of friends, and was really into hiking and outdoor stuff. I started going on hikes with her, got into better shape, and felt like maybe this time things would work out. You can probably guess what happened next. Introduced her to the family around month 3. Ethan was his usual charismatic self. And like clockwork, around month 5, Rachel started acting weird. But this time, something was different. This time, I noticed Ethan had been texting more than usual. He'd always have his phone face down on the table during family dinners, and he'd excuse himself to take calls. I didn't want to be paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Still, I had zero proof, and accusing my brother of sabotaging my relationships seemed insane. So I kept my mouth shut and watched as Rachel slowly distanced herself from me before breaking things off 6 weeks later. 3 relationships, 3 identical patterns. I started keeping a mental timeline, and that's when the pieces began clicking together. But again, no proof, just a gut feeling and a series of coincidences that seemed too perfect to be random. I took a break from dating after Rachel, spent about 8 months focusing on work and myself. I got promoted to senior analyst at my firm, started playing basketball with some guys from work, and generally just lived my life. During this time, Ethan met someone named Brittany. They dated for a few months, but it fizzled out. Same with the next girl, and the one after that. Ethan couldn't seem to hold down a relationship either, which I thought was karma doing its thing. Then I met Kelly. This was about 3 years ago, and she was hands down the best relationship I'd ever had. She was a nurse, had the kindest heart, and we just fit together perfectly. I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. We moved in together after 8 months, and I was seriously thinking about proposing. I made a decision this time. I didn't introduce her to my family right away. I kept making excuses about scheduling conflicts, said my parents were busy, whatever I could think of to delay the inevitable family dinner. Kelly thought it was weird, but she didn't push it. This went on for almost a year. And during that year, everything was perfect. No drama, no sudden distance, no mysterious breakup. We traveled together, talked about our future, looked at houses we might want to buy someday. I started thinking maybe I'd been wrong about Ethan. Maybe those other relationships just weren't meant to be. But Kelly really wanted to meet my family. She started getting hurt that I kept making excuses, said it felt like I was ashamed of her or hiding her from them. I wasn't, obviously. I just had this nagging paranoia that wouldn't go away. Eventually, I ran out of excuses and set up a family dinner at my parents' place. The dinner itself went fine. My parents loved Kelly, thought she was wonderful, told me I'd found a keeper. Ethan was polite but not overly friendly, which I actually took as a good sign. Maybe he'd grown up. Maybe he'd changed. Maybe I really had been paranoid this whole time. 2 weeks after that dinner, Kelly started acting different. She became secretive, stopped talking about our future together, and seemed distracted all the time. I felt that familiar sinking feeling in my gut. When I confronted her about it, she initially denied anything was wrong. But I pressed harder this time, told her I could tell something had changed, and I needed to know what it was. She finally admitted she'd been having doubts about us. Said she wasn't sure if we wanted the same things anymore, that maybe we'd moved too fast. I asked where this was coming from. We'd literally been talking about buying a house together 2 weeks ago. She couldn't give me a straight answer, just kept saying she needed space to think. We broke up 3 weeks later. I was devastated. This wasn't like the others. Kelly and I had built a real life together. We had shared furniture, shared bills, shared dreams. And it all fell apart right after she met my family. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment across town and spent the next few months in a dark place. My friends tried to get me out of the house, but I wasn't interested. I threw myself into work, pulled 60-hour weeks, and basically became a hermit. During one of these late nights at the office, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Jessica, my first serious girlfriend from 7 years ago. She said she needed to talk to me about something important and asked if we could meet for coffee. I was confused but agreed. We met at a Starbucks near my office on a Saturday afternoon. Jessica looked nervous, kept fidgeting with her coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. Finally, she just came out with it. She told me that back when we were dating, Ethan had messaged her on social media. Started out innocent, just being friendly, asking how she was doing, making small talk. But then he started sharing things about me, personal things. He told her I'd cheated on a girlfriend in college. I hadn't. He said I had anger issues and had punched a wall during an argument with a friend. Never happened. He mentioned that I'd made some questionable comments about women that made him uncomfortable. Complete lies. Jessica said she started pulling away from me because she didn't know what to believe. She really liked me, but Ethan was my brother. Why would he lie about his own family? She figured there must be some truth to what he was saying, and she didn't want to get involved with someone who had those kinds of issues. So she broke up with me. She told me she'd felt guilty about it for years, especially after she later realized some of the things Ethan told her didn't add up with the person she'd gotten to know. She'd been thinking about reaching out to apologize, but didn't know how. Then she saw on social media that I'd recently broken up with Kelly, and it pushed her to finally contact me. I sat there in that Starbucks for a solid minute just processing what she'd told me. Then I asked her if she still had the messages from Ethan. She pulled out her phone and showed me. There they were. Months of messages where my own brother systematically destroyed my relationship by feeding her lies about who I was. I took screenshots of everything. Then I asked Jessica if she'd be willing to help me if I needed it down the line. She said absolutely. She felt terrible about believing him and wanted to make it right if she could. I thanked her for telling me and left. I sat in my car for 20 minutes just staring at those screenshots on my phone. 7 years. 7 years of destroyed relationships, of questioning what was wrong with me, of thinking I was the problem. And it was Ethan the whole time. I wanted to confront him immediately, but I forced myself to be smart about this. If Ethan had done this to Jessica, he'd probably done it to the others too. I needed more proof before I made any moves. I tracked down Amanda on social media and sent her a message. Kept it casual, said I'd been thinking about our relationship and wanted to ask her something. She responded pretty quickly, said she'd be willing to talk. We met for lunch that week. I didn't tell her what Jessica had revealed. I just asked her honestly why she'd broken up with me. She was hesitant at first, but eventually opened up. Same story as Jessica. Ethan had reached out to her, acted friendly and concerned, then started dropping hints that I wasn't who she thought I was. He told her I'd been talking about her behind her back, saying I didn't think she was smart enough for me. Never said anything remotely close to that. He mentioned I'd been on dating apps even though we were together. Wasn't true. He made her doubt everything about our relationship until she couldn't take it anymore. I showed her the screenshots from Jessica. Amanda's face went white. She started apologizing, saying she should have talked to me directly instead of believing Ethan. I told her it wasn't her fault. Ethan was a master manipulator, and he'd played on her insecurities perfectly. Amanda also had messages. More screenshots from my collection. I tried reaching out to Rachel next, but she'd moved to another state and never responded to my messages. That was fine. I had enough proof with Jessica and Amanda, but I wanted to be thorough. I started going through my old social media posts, looking for patterns I might have missed. Every single relationship that failed, Ethan had been unusually active on social media right around the time things started going south. Comments on my posts, likes on photos with girlfriends, tags and random stuff. He was inserting himself into my digital presence in a way that seemed friendly, but was actually him maintaining contact with these women. I checked his follower lists and found all of them. Jessica, Amanda, Rachel, Kelly. He was still following them all. They'd all unfollowed him back at some point, but he never unfollowed them. It was like he was keeping tabs on what happened to them after he destroyed their relationships with me. I spent hours documenting every interaction, creating a timeline that showed exactly how his involvement correlated with the deterioration of each relationship. The pattern was undeniable once I laid it all out visually. Each relationship lasted almost exactly the same amount of time before falling apart. Each one had the same arc: initial happiness, meeting family around month 3, Ethan becoming friendly with them, then the slow decline starting around month 4 or 5. Then I did something I'm not proud of, but desperate times and all that. I created a fake social media account. Different name, different photos, made it look like a real person. I used stock photos, created a whole backstory. Said he worked in sales, lived 2 towns over, was into running. I friended random people to make it seem legitimate, posted generic stuff about weekend plans and food, built up a believable profile over a few weeks. I even joined local groups and made comments here and there to establish the account as real. It took almost 3 weeks to make it look authentic. I commented on news articles, shared a few memes, liked posts from the random people who'd accepted my friend requests. Then I sent a friend request to Ethan. He accepted within a day. I started chatting with him as this fake person. Nothing suspicious, just normal conversation. Commented on one of his posts about a basketball game, then sent him a direct message about it. We went back and forth about sports for a bit. Then I waited a few days before messaging again, asking his opinion on some local restaurants since I'd just moved to the area. He gave me recommendations, seemed happy to help. I built up the rapport over 2 weeks. Little conversations here and there, nothing too frequent or intense. Just enough to establish that we were friendly acquaintances. After a few days, I casually mentioned in passing that my friend was dating this guy, and the relationship seemed kind of rocky. Asked if he'd ever dealt with relationship drama, since he seemed like a good guy to get advice from. That opened the floodgates. Ethan started telling me about his own dating experiences, how relationships were complicated, how people weren't always who they seemed to be. He was positioning himself as this relationship guru, which would have been funny if it wasn't so twisted. Then, after another few days of casual chat, I casually mentioned that my friend was dating this guy named Jake, and asked if he knew him since I saw we had a mutual friend with that name on social media. Ethan took the bait. He asked which Jake, and I described myself, my job, my general appearance, where I lived. He immediately knew who I was talking about and said, yeah, that was his brother. Then he started talking. Oh man, did he start talking? He told this fake person that I was bad news. Said I had commitment issues, that I'd cheated on multiple girlfriends, that I was emotionally manipulative and controlling. He said he'd tried to warn women about me before, but they never listened until they saw it themselves. He painted himself as this concerned brother who just wanted to protect innocent women from my toxic behavior. I screenshot everything, every single message. The fake account conversation was the final piece I needed, proof that this wasn't just about those specific relationships. This was a pattern. This was intentional. This was who Ethan really was. I sat on this information for a few weeks, trying to decide what to do with it. Part of me wanted to go scorched earth immediately, send the screenshots to our parents, post everything online, burn his life down the way he'd burned mine. But I'm not that guy. I don't act on emotion. I wait for the right moment. That moment came about 4 months ago. Ethan met someone named Lauren. They'd been dating for maybe 6 weeks when I first heard about her, and I could tell this one was different. Ethan actually talked about her at family dinners. He smiled when he got texts from her. He made plans around her schedule. For the first time in his life, my brother was actually invested in a relationship. I did some research on Lauren through social media. She was 25, worked as a graphic designer for a small agency, seemed like a genuinely nice person based on her posts. She volunteered at an animal shelter, posted about social causes she cared about, had a tight group of friends who regularly commented on her stuff. From everything I could see, she was way too good for Ethan. I watched and waited. Ethan brought Lauren to a family dinner after 2 months of dating. She was sweet, friendly, asked me about my work and my hobbies. I was polite but distant. I wasn't about to befriend someone who was dating the person who'd ruined 7 years of my life, but I could see Ethan was serious about her. He held her hand during dinner, looked at her like she hung the moon, actually acted like a decent human being for once. My parents loved her, kept telling Ethan he'd better not mess this up. 3 months into their relationship, Ethan announced he was going to ask Lauren to move in with him. My mom literally teared up at the dinner table. My dad clapped him on the back and said it was about time he settled down. Everyone was thrilled for him. That's when I knew it was time. I reached out to Lauren through social media, sent her a message saying I was Ethan's brother and needed to talk to her about something important. I said it wasn't urgent, but it was something she deserved to know before she made any big decisions with him. I asked if she'd be willing to meet me for coffee. She responded a few hours later. She was clearly confused, but said she'd meet me. We set it up for a Tuesday afternoon at a coffee shop halfway between our places. Lauren showed up right on time, looking nervous. I ordered us both coffee, and we sat down at a corner table. She asked what this was about, and I told her I needed to show her something. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder I'd created with all the screenshots organized by person and date. Before I started, I told her I knew this was going to be a lot, and I understood if she needed to take breaks or if she wanted to leave at any point. I wasn't trying to ambush her. I just thought she deserved to know the truth about who she was considering moving in with. She nodded and said to show her. I started with Jessica, showed her the messages where Ethan had lied about me, systematically destroyed that relationship with fabricated stories. I explained who Jessica was, how long we'd dated, and how I'd spent years not understanding why she'd suddenly pulled away from me. Lauren read every message, her face going from confused to concerned. I told her about finally meeting with Jessica after all these years, about how guilty she felt for believing Ethan's lies. I showed Lauren the screenshots of our conversation where Jessica apologized and explained everything. Then I showed her Amanda's messages. Same pattern, different lies tailored to that specific person. I explained how Ethan had told Amanda I was on dating apps while we were together, how he'd said I talked badly about her intelligence behind her back. All complete fabrications. Lauren stopped drinking her coffee, just sat there reading. I walked her through Rachel's story too, even though I didn't have messages from her. I explained the pattern, how 3 relationships in a row had fallen apart the exact same way at the exact same point in the timeline. How I'd started to think something was wrong with me, that I was sabotaging my own happiness somehow. Then I showed her the conversation with my fake account, where Ethan had badmouthed me to a complete stranger and painted himself as a protective brother, trying to warn women away from his toxic sibling. Lauren's hand was shaking as she scrolled through those messages. I explained the Kelly situation too, how I'd tried to protect that relationship by not introducing her to my family, how it had worked for almost a year until I finally ran out of excuses, how Kelly and I had been talking about buying a house together, building a real future, and then it all fell apart within weeks of her meeting Ethan. Lauren sat back in her chair and just stared at the laptop screen for a solid minute. I let her process. This was a lot of information to take in about someone you're planning to move in with. I told her everything, the timeline of my relationships, how they all fell apart the same way after meeting Ethan, how I'd spent years thinking something was wrong with me. I explained how I'd finally gotten proof and how I'd been sitting on it, waiting for the right moment. I looked her in the eye and said, I didn't know if Ethan had changed. Maybe he had. Maybe his relationship with her was genuine and he'd become a better person, but she deserved to know who he'd been and what he was capable of before she moved in with him. Lauren didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared at my laptop screen, scrolling through the messages. Finally, she asked if she could take photos of the screenshots. I said absolutely, and sat there while she photographed every single one. Then she asked me why I was telling her this now. I was honest. I told her I'd been waiting for him to actually care about someone the way he'd prevented me from caring about anyone. I wanted him to feel what I'd felt. I wanted him to lose something that mattered. But I also told her it wasn't just about revenge. She seemed like a genuinely good person from everything I could see, and I didn't want her to make a huge life decision based on a false impression of who Ethan was. Moving in with someone is a big deal. She deserved to know the full picture. She asked if there was any chance I was making this up, if maybe I had some weird grudge against Ethan. I told her to contact Jessica and Amanda herself if she wanted verification. I gave her their contact information from the screenshots. I said I understood this was a lot, and she had no reason to trust me over her boyfriend, but the proof was there if she wanted to verify it. She nodded slowly, said she understood. Then she asked if she could have some time to think about what to do with this information. I said, of course, gave her my number in case she had questions, and we parted ways. I didn't hear from her for 3 days. Didn't hear from Ethan either, so I assumed she hadn't told him about our conversation. I started wondering if maybe she'd decided to give him a chance anyway, or if she thought I was lying and making everything up. During those 3 days, I barely slept. I kept checking my phone, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Maybe I should have just let it go. Maybe revenge wasn't worth potentially making me look like the bad guy in my family's eyes if Lauren decided to tell Ethan and he spun it as me being jealous or vindictive. But then I'd remember those 7 years. I'd remember crying in my apartment after Kelly left, convinced I was fundamentally broken somehow. I'd remember all the self-help books I'd read trying to figure out what was wrong with me. All the times I'd questioned my own worth because relationship after relationship fell apart for reasons I couldn't understand. No, I'd made the right call. Lauren deserved the truth, and Ethan deserved to face consequences for what he'd done. Then, on Friday evening, I got a text from Ethan. All it said was, "We need to talk, now." I called him. He picked up on the first ring and immediately started yelling. Called me every name in the book, said I'd ruined his life, asked how I could do this to him. I stayed calm, asked him what he was talking about. He said Lauren had broken up with him. They'd gone to dinner at this nice Italian place he'd made reservations at weeks ago. He was planning to give her a key to his apartment over dessert, make the moving in together thing official. But before the appetizers even arrived, Lauren started asking him questions. She asked him about Jessica, about Amanda, about the fake social media account. She pulled out her phone and showed him all the screenshots I'd given her. Right there in the middle of the restaurant, she laid out every lie he'd told, every relationship he'd sabotaged, every manipulation he'd orchestrated. Ethan tried to deny it at first, said I'd fabricated everything, that I was jealous of his happiness, that he'd never do something like that. But Lauren had done her homework. She'd reached out to Jessica and Amanda herself after meeting with me, verified the stories independently. She'd even tracked down Rachel somehow and got confirmation from her too. Lauren told him she couldn't be with someone capable of that level of cruelty toward their own brother. She said she didn't care if he'd changed or if he was different now. The fact that he'd done it at all was enough. She put $60 on the table for her half of the meal they hadn't eaten, told him to lose her number, and walked out. Ethan sat in that restaurant alone for 20 minutes before he left. Then he called me. I let him yell for a while. When he finally ran out of steam, I asked him if he was done. He went quiet. Then I asked him if he remembered Jessica, Amanda, Rachel, Kelly. Asked him if he remembered what he'd done to each of them. Asked him if he'd ever once considered what that did to me. He didn't answer. I told him I'd spent 7 years thinking something was wrong with me. 7 years of failed relationships, of self-doubt, of wondering why I couldn't make things work with good women. 7 years of him playing puppet master with my life, while pretending to be a supportive brother. I said I'd given him chance after chance to come clean, to apologize, to show literally any remorse for what he'd done. Instead, he'd kept doing it. Even with Kelly, the one I'd tried so hard to protect from him, he'd found a way to destroy it. Ethan started trying to explain himself, said he didn't know why he did it, that he was jealous of how easy relationships seemed to come to me, that he felt like I had everything figured out while he struggled. He said he never meant for it to go as far as it did, that it started as a stupid joke and then spiraled. I cut him off, told him I didn't care about his reasons. I didn't care if he was sorry. I didn't care if he'd changed. All I cared about was making sure he felt a fraction of what I'd felt every time a relationship fell apart for reasons I couldn't understand. I said Lauren was a good person who deserved better than him, and I was glad I could save her from making the mistake of moving in with someone who could do what he'd done. Then I hung up. My parents called me the next day. Ethan had told them some version of events that painted me as the villain. They wanted to hear my side. I sent them all the screenshots, the testimonies from Jessica and Amanda, the full timeline. I laid it all out. My mom cried. My dad got quiet in that way he does when he's really disappointed in someone. They said they needed time to process everything, But they believed me. They could see the evidence was overwhelming. That was 2 months ago. Ethan and I haven't spoken since that phone call. My parents have tried to facilitate some kind of reconciliation, but I've made it clear I have zero interest in rebuilding a relationship with him. Some things you don't come back from, and 7 years of sabotage is one of them. My mom told me last week that Ethan's been struggling. He apparently tried to reach out to Lauren a few times, but she blocked him on everything. He's been miserable at family dinners, barely talks to anyone. My mom thinks he's genuinely remorseful now and wants to make amends. I don't care. He had years to be remorseful. He had countless opportunities to stop, to come clean, to be an actual brother instead of whatever he was. He only feels bad now because he finally faced consequences for his actions. As for me, I'm doing okay. I started seeing someone new about a month ago. Her name is Nicole, and she's a veterinarian who specializes in exotic animals. We met at a friend's birthday party, and we've been taking things slow. I told her about the whole situation with Ethan on our third date. Figured she deserved to know what kind of family drama she might be walking into. Nicole's response was perfect. She said any guy who'd go through what I went through and still be willing to trust someone new must be pretty strong. Said she'd like to meet my parents eventually, but she completely understood if I wanted to keep her away from family stuff for a while. I'm planning to introduce her to my parents next month. Just my parents, though. Ethan won't be there. I've made it clear to my mom that any family events I attend, Ethan can't be at. She doesn't love it, but she respects it. Jessica reached out again a few weeks ago. She said she'd heard through mutual friends about what happened with Lauren and wanted to check in. We got coffee again, and she apologized one more time for believing Ethan all those years ago. I told her it wasn't her fault. He was a convincing liar, and she had no reason to doubt him at the time. She mentioned she's engaged now, getting married next spring. Said her fiancé is a good guy who treats her right, and she's learned a lot about trusting her own judgment instead of listening to outside voices. I'm happy for her. She deserves it. Amanda also sent me a message last month. She said she'd been following the situation loosely through Jessica and wanted to know if I was doing all right. I told her I was better than I'd been in years. She said she was glad, and that she hoped I found someone who appreciated me. I told her I think I might have. Rachel never did respond to my original messages, but I'm not worried about it. She's living her life somewhere else, and I'm living mine here. That's fine. Looking back on all of this, I don't regret telling Lauren the truth. Some people might think it was petty or vindictive, but I genuinely believe she deserved to know who she was getting involved with. If Ethan had actually changed and become a better person, maybe their relationship could have survived the truth. The fact that it didn't says more about him than it does about me. Would I have done things differently if I could go back? Maybe. Maybe I would have confronted Ethan sooner, would have dug for proof earlier instead of spending years doubting myself. But I can't change the past. And honestly, I think things worked out the way they needed to. Ethan learned that actions have consequences. Lauren avoided what probably would have been a terrible living situation. And I finally got closure on 7 years of confusion and self-doubt. My friends have been incredibly supportive through all of this. They've known something was off for years but never had proof either. When I finally showed them the screenshots and explained everything, they were equal parts shocked and not surprised at all. One of my buddies said he'd always thought Ethan seemed fake, too friendly in a way that felt calculated. Guess his instincts were right. I've thought about reaching out to Kelly. She was the one who hurt the most to lose, and part of me wonders if she'd want to know the truth about why our relationship fell apart. But I don't know if that would help, or just reopen old wounds for both of us. She's moved on with her life, and maybe it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. The hardest part of all this hasn't been dealing with Ethan, or the aftermath with Lauren. It's been accepting that my brother, someone I grew up with and trusted completely, was capable of such calculated cruelty. That's the piece I'm still processing. People ask me if I hate him. Honestly, I don't. Hate requires energy and emotion that I don't want to waste on him anymore. I'm just done. He's not my brother in any meaningful sense. He's just someone I share DNA with who happened to destroy a significant chunk of my 20s because of his own insecurities. I dealt with everything by throwing myself into work and hobbies. Started playing guitar again, something I hadn't done since college. Joined a recreational basketball league with some guys from work. Kept myself busy enough that I didn't have time to spiral. The guitar thing has actually been great. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed it, and it's been a good outlet for processing everything. Nicole came over last week and heard me playing. She said I was pretty good, asked if I'd ever thought about joining a band or anything. I laughed and said no, this was just for me. But it was nice to have someone show genuine interest in something I cared about. Work has been going well too. Got another promotion about a month ago, I'm a director now, managing a team of 8 analysts. The extra responsibility keeps me focused during the day, and the pay increase doesn't hurt either. I'm finally in a position where I can think about buying a house instead of renting, which feels like a real adult achievement. My parents invited me over for dinner last week. Just the 3 of us. No Ethan. We talked about normal family stuff. My dad's golf game, my mom's book club, my new position at work. It felt good to have that back, even if there's still this Ethan-shaped elephant in the room that we're all trying to ignore. Toward the end of the night, my dad asked me what I wanted them to do about family holidays coming up. I told them honestly, I'm not ready to be in the same room as Ethan. Maybe not ever. If they want to split holidays, so we each get time with them separately, I'm fine with that. They looked sad but nodded. My mom asked if there was any scenario where I could see forgiving Ethan. I thought about it for a minute before answering. I said maybe if he'd come forward on his own, admitted what he'd done without being forced to, and shown genuine remorse before facing any consequences. There might have been a path forward, but that's not what happened. He only felt bad when his actions finally caught up with him, and that's not real remorse. That's just regret at getting caught. She didn't push it after that. Next week is Thanksgiving, and I'm going to my parents' place on Thursday, while Ethan goes on Friday. Mom's making 2 separate turkey dinners, which seems excessive, but she insisted. Said she wants both her sons to have a real Thanksgiving, even if we can't be in the same room. Nicole's going to her own family's Thanksgiving, but we're planning to meet up that evening and maybe watch a movie or something. She knows family stuff is complicated for me right now and hasn't pushed to be included, which I appreciate. There's no rush. We're taking things at our own pace. I told her about this whole Reddit post the other day. She laughed and said it sounded like something from a movie. I said yeah, except in movies the brothers usually reconcile at the end. She asked if I thought that would happen with us. I said no, and I was okay with that. She kissed me and said she thought I was handling everything really well. So that's where things stand now. Ethan's somewhere being miserable about losing Lauren and facing the consequences of his actions. Lauren's presumably living her best life free from my brother's manipulation. My ex-girlfriends are all moved on with their lives. And I'm here with Nicole, actually happy for the first time in years. Finally free from the sabotage that defined my 20s. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.